and welcome back to blackdoctor.org. I am your host, Dr. Renee. And in case you have not been joining us this week is National Infertility Awareness Week. And so we are trying to dispel all the rumors and all the myths and get the information out there to our community about something that unfortunately we never talk about. So I need you to share this because somebody you know is going through this, but they just haven't spoke to you about it, which is why we need to normalize the conversation so that girlfriends can talk about it, sisters and moms and nieces. And today we're talking about male factor. So for some people, they're probably like, huh? We're going to peel back the onion and you'll understand that. But please make sure you share the broadcast. Let your friends and family know so that they can watch this when they get a chance. And I'm going to bring on my guests tonight that I'm so excited to have. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hi.
So we have Dr. Danielle Lane, who is an REI, which you guys learned last night is a reproductive endocrinology infertility doctor. And so she is the one that gets people pregnant. And TJ Payton wrote an amazing book, and we're going to let her tell her story and let her tell the name of her book because, I know the name of the book, but I want you all to hear her say the name of the book when she tells you her story. So we're going to start with you, TJ. Please share your story with the audience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Renee, for having me on. My name is TJ Payton, and in 2013, my husband and I found out that we had male factor infertility. We had tried to get pregnant. We got married early. We were in our friend group to get married, so we felt like we had time. We were in our early 20s, so let's have fun. We have time, and we weren't getting pregnant. So I never forget the day we found out. I thought it was me because I had fibroids, and I just thought I'm the reason why we can't get pregnant. And when the doctor told my husband to get checked, he was like, "For what?" Because of course, in the Black community, and in communities in general, but definitely in the Black community, a male being infertile is just not. It's unheard of because most people think that Black men or men of color, even Hispanic men, are the most fertile people on the planet. All you hear about is men having a bunch of kids. So there was nothing to alert us. And of course, his family had boys in his family, and children. And when the nurse called me, she said, "We didn't find anything." And I said, "Oh, okay." I knew there wasn't a problem because he did a semen analysis. And she said, "No, we didn't find any sperm." And I said, "Okay, you say like you didn't find it and you need to go back. You got our results mixed up." And she said, "No, we didn't find anything at all." And we learned it was a condition called Azospermia, in which a man doesn't produce sperm. And so after that diagnosis, our lives spiraled because what we thought was perfection in our world, we got married, we did the right thing, and here we are wanting to have a baby, and we realized that love plus marriage doesn't equal a baby. And as people of faith, that was very hard because, God says, "Be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth. He'll give you the desires of your heart." So we went through the stages of grief, everything from anger to sadness to even being angry at God, to depression, to you name it, we had it. And we did a couple of procedures. My husband had a testicular biopsy, which I'm sure Dr. Lane can explain what that is. And that turned out to be no sperm in the testicles. We then tried to do foster to adopt. We live in a state of Georgia. And so we didn't want to do that because that was tough. We looked into donor egg and donor sperm, but at the time I wasn't comfortable doing that because I didn't need a surrogate. I could carry my own baby if I wanted to. And I wasn't sure how my husband felt about donor sperm. Later to realize there's not a lot of Black sperm donors anyway. So that was few and far between. And then we tried to do adoption through the state, but you either have to adopt a sibling group or we had someone come out to our home, and we have a pool in our backyard, and they denied us because we couldn't put a 4-foot fence around an already fenced in pool. So we were just at a loss. And finally we just gave up on the process. In addition to finding out we had male factor infertility, our marriage took a hard hit in terms of intimacy, trusting one another, being angry at one another, being frustrated with one another because we both were grieving and we didn't know how to grieve. And if I had to be honest with myself, I was selfish as a wife because I thought about me, which at the time, that's all I could think about. I wasn't really concerned about my husband because I didn't know how to help him. And so we went through this battle back and forth about, just when are we going to have a baby versus what's wrong with you? Like, why aren't you producing sperm? So it came to a point where I had to get personal with God and just say, what if I never have a baby? And I really had to come to terms with never. And once I came to terms with the terms never, I just let go. In the midst of that, I journaled a lot. And so a friend of mine challenged me, one of my best friends. She said, do you want to be pregnant or do you want to be a mom? She said, those are not two of the same things. And I got mad and I'm like, you had a baby. What are you talking about? But when I really sat down with myself and got quiet, it was like, do I want to be pregnant or do I want to be a mom? Yeah, that's a good question. And so I told her how when we found out about male factor infertility, there was nothing out there. Our friends didn't know about it. We couldn't find anything. And those people who did have it didn't look like us. So she said, create your own space. So I used my journal and I turned it into a book. And it's called Semen Secrets, Truth and Confessions of a Wife's Journey Through Male Infertility. And so I did have a very honest and candid conversation about our journey through male infertility. And even at the end of the book, I still did not have a child. So I finished the book without knowing if I was going to ever be a mom. And so here I am. And I will say we even had infertility to the point where my husband finally revealed that at one time he thought about considering even taking his life because he didn't know what else he had to live for if you can't give your wife a baby and you can't reproduce. So even mental health played a part in our journey. So that's the long short of it, how we got
Tell
here.
the happy ending, even though the book came out first, please. Yeah.
So the happy ending is after the book came out, we kind of just were remaining hopeful that whatever was going to happen or not happen, we were okay with it. And about a year after that, we had a friend that had adopted previously, and she knew about our situation. And I never forget, she called me and she said, we have a baby. And I thought she was adopting another baby for her. And I was like, oh, girl, I'm so happy for you. She was like, no, I found you a baby. And I told them that we would take it. And so I was like, oh, okay, before I talked to my husband. But we found out about the birth mom in September, and our daughter was born in January. And she is definitely the light of everyone's life. And my husband said that she's even more special because it's something for another person to entrust their life with you. And that was huge for him. And I can honestly say my daughter opened up a part of his heart I've never seen. And that she can ask for the world 1,000 times over. I can ask for it, I might get it. She can ask for it 25,000 times and she will get it every time. So God did not waste my tears for sure. She came when I needed her. So yes, that's my story.
Amen. That is lovely. So, Dr. Lane, let's go back to the beginning. Azospermia.
Sure. So the definition of azospermia is the absence of sperm in a semen analysis. So when a gentleman ejaculates, the idea is that we expect to see not just fluid, but within that fluid, we expect to be able to identify a certain amount of sperm. And we use parameters like concentration, the volume of the semen or the fluid, the percentage of sperm that are moving to determine whether the amount of sperm that we see is normal or subnormal or just altogether absent, right? And so azospermia means we're seeing no sperm at all in the ejaculate.
So my question is, do you know the statistics on men, period, having azospermia,
Yeah.
and then Black men?
Good question. So, what I was going to say is when we talk about first, let's just talk about male factor fertility, right? So we know that 15% of men of couples in the US are going to have some form of fertility. 1 in 8 is the statistic that we talk about, right? And half of those are going to be related not just to a female factor, but also a male factor. And then if you're looking specifically within that, about 10% of those folks are going to have the diagnosis of azospermia, which is the complete absence of sperm.
Okay.
No, I touched the light. No. Okay. In addition to that, in addition to sort of the issues of azospermia, sometimes it requires, to the point that you were making, additional procedures to see if, even though there isn't sperm in the ejaculate, sometimes we can find sperm higher up if we look into the epididymis, which are the tubes leading from the testicles to the urethra for ejaculation, or in the testicles itself. So there are procedures called TESIs and PESAs that allow us, and MESAs actually, that allow us to actually look into the epididymis or the testicles and extract sperm. But, to the point that you're making, that's not always the case. Sometimes we only find immature. Well, always the sperm is immature and needs to be used in the form of IVF if we extract it. But sometimes you just don't find any in there, or not enough in there, or not good enough quality sperm in there. And so sometimes you're in a situation where you really just don't have sperm.
So, did you guys ever look at a sperm donor, or you said no?
No, so we thought about it, but for me, my husband said it was just me, but I didn't know how he would feel about me carrying someone else's child. And it could be that it was in my mind. He always says that he was okay with it, but I didn't feel a peace about it. And if I always ask God to settle my soul with something, so I feel like I'm walking in the right space, and my soul was never settled with that. And then it's also, you watch too many documentaries, you see too many things, and it's like, oh gosh, I get this sperm, and everything turns out to be crazy, and I get a sperm from somebody who's like just out of it. And so I really should have stopped watching TV. But those are some of the things that scared me away. But now, being in this community, although that wasn't my choice, I always tell people to explore the choice, because you never know, what is for you, and what your process may not be my process, but we can still all get to the same end goal. But the people who are trying are finding it very difficult to find a sperm donor, and they find it difficult if they do ask within their family. It's kind of a weird question, like, hey, cousin, do you mind if we come over and get some of your sperm? So just talking to people about how you have that conversation, definitely in the Black community, and then having to, as a man, what do you mean? There's like, how can't you do this? My husband called it shooting blanks. What do you mean you're shooting blanks? So in our community, very taboo, and as men, especially Black men, not a conversation that you just have or even want to talk about. And so that's what we ran into.
How far back was this? I'm sorry. How far back was this when you were when you were going through this experience the first time? Do you know what I mean? Like when this began, when he had that test result?
2013.
And the reason I brought that up is because, in fairness, that is 10 years ago, right?
Right.
And I think what has changed in the past 10 years is that there has been, there are an increasing number of providers that have really started to advocate for the needs of women, men, couples, patients of color. And I still am not sure we've done as good of a job as we need to in the space of, male donor sperm in terms of diversity, but it's much better than it was 10 years ago. I will say that, in the space of egg donation, I know we've talked about this, there is more available than there was 10 years ago, for sure, amongst donors. And now there's even donated embryos, right? And so I think that it's fair to say that the space of what we call third-party reproduction, i.e. there's a third person involved other than just the intended mother and intended father, or the intended parents, let's just say, or parent, is much different than it was. And I guess just briefly to address your point about concerns about sort of the safety, if you will, of the sperm donor, right? All donor tissue in this country is put through a very rigorous process to be made what's known as FDA eligible. Donors, particularly egg donors, but also to some extent sperm donors, go through legal counseling, psychological evaluation, genetic screening, history and physicals, very rigorous infectious disease testing. And so, there's a fairly inflexible process that is put in place to ensure that the intended parents or parent are not at risk for any sort of unexpected disease or mental health state as to what you were alluding to. So, I mean, I think that's really important to understand for folks out there that are maybe at the beginning of their process, because I think otherwise, yeah, you're right, it does feel very scary. And in addition to that, if you do decide you want to work with a family member for a donor of any sort, right, there are also some very rigorous processes around, sort of psychological consultations that are recommended for both the intended recipients as well as the donors to make sure that, the things that you haven't thought about are spoken, right? Like, gosh, my brother's sperm is what we used and now this is our child, but my brother keeps talking about how he doesn't like how we're parenting, right? Like, how are you going to address, what I mean? So things like that, right? So I do think there are ways to at least address the sorts of issues that were concerning to you, even if at the end of the day, you don't get to a place where it's comfortable for you.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point. Because I will say what helped us, and I think I always encourage people, you have, just like you shop for shoes, just like you shop for food, you have to shop for a doctor. And if every doctor doesn't have bedside manner and every doctor is not there to educate you. And I will say that the urologist that my husband had, fabulous. I mean, top down, he knew that he would schedule 2 hours for our appointments because he knew I was going to come in with my Google doctor book and he was going to have to go through and explain, how I Google myself into a hole. But I encourage anyone to find a doctor that has a good bedside manner, and because we did run into some where we just felt like a number, like, here you go, spit you out. And I will say my husband's urologist also was concerned about his total health. I know that you came to me because you want to produce a child, but do I need to refer you to an endocrinologist? Do we need to talk about other things about your health? Because at the end of the day, you still have to be a whole healthy man. And getting me to also respect that process and also getting us to want to explore other options and making it comfortable to have those types of conversations. So I think it's really important, if you have a doctor and they're not explaining to you and not helping to ease those kind of fears, if you Google yourself into a hole, then you should really look for that person. Definitely, if you're a woman and you don't understand male reproductive health in general, just to understand that whole process and helping your husband or your significant other understand, it's very important to have a doctor with great bedside manner.
And that's what we preach here on Black Doctor all the time. Just like you change your hairdresser or, because they gave you a bad haircut, you can change your doctor. There is somebody else. You can go find someone else, and you don't have to stick with that person. If you don't understand a word of what they're telling you, this is your health. Like, you can play with a whole lot of things like your hair, but you cannot play with your health. You need to understand that. And when you're dealing with REI things, fertility is a time-sensitive thing.
That's the thing.
It's time-sensitive. So you don't have a year to waste with a doctor who is not giving you appointments in a timely fashion or is not answering your questions so that you understand what you need to do before the next appointment. When we take these medications, and because I'm doing the journey myself, when you take these medications, there's times that you have to take them, and you have to understand what, when, where. If you cannot feel comfortable asking, what time do I do this? What time is that? Then you need to find someone else, because you take something at the wrong time could completely screw up and throw your how many thousands of dollars out the window. So it's really important. But I wanted to say that 10, maybe 15 years ago, somebody mentioned to me something about sperm donor or something. And so I just went on Google and was like, I just want to see. Because I had a sick suspicion because I'm Black and I grew up Black. I thought maybe there weren't a lot of us. And I just said, let me just look. And I looked and I was like, it was exactly where I thought. Let me find me a man because this ain't going to work out well for me.
Yeah.
But years later, and I'm 45. And so a couple years ago, I was like, okay, let me find out. So I did a fertility workup, figure out where I'm at. And then I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. I had to change my insurance because my deductible was $3,000. Now it's $750. And I said, okay, once we do that, then we can start this ball rolling. And so I went, Dr. Cindy Duke is my doctor, and her staff is amazing. They sent me all these websites to look up for the, banks. I looked, and the first one almost gave me a heart attack. There was one Black donor. It was the California Cryo Bank.
And they actually have the most diverse group of most of the sperm banks. I mean, really, like Seattle sperm bank's not diverse, yeah.
When I tell you I about had a heart attack, I go, oh my God. Now I'm praying things have changed. I haven't been back and looked again, but that was the first one on the list. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this is awful. But I was able to, Fairfax had a ton. And so I was like, oh, I have my pick of the litter, literally now. So I was very happy with that. But I know that there are a lot of people, I know I'm in a lot of groups of Black women that are doing this. And so they're like, oh yeah, California, and I've ever seen Seattle. And so, yeah, I see that there is a lot better things going, but I was like, oh my God, this is not looking good. I'm petrified.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so,
and
the other issue is, I mean, not that this isn't different in other ethnicities, but we don't all look the same. Right. And so, finding a donor that's of African-American descent that actually resembles us, whatever that is, isn't always the same. And that's also been a challenge. Egg donors all looking a certain way. And, then I've got a patient who looks different and she's like, so it's still a space that I think we need to work at expanding to ensure that we're really meeting the needs of all of our patients. That said, I think one of the points that your friend TJ made was that at some point, your decision is, am I in this for some of these nuances, which I'm not saying are insignificant, but at some point, often people come to a place of, I just want a baby. And, then that's an important sort of understanding to know, sort of understanding when people's switch, I call it, has flipped to that state, because then, there are a lot of options that maybe you wouldn't have thought about before that become a lot more available. And that's important to know too.
Yeah, it's that's the other thing that I love about the fertility clinics and the doctors that I have spoken to. Their offices have all these resources of different, we have, you need a surrogate. Here's a surrogate. We have this relationship with this adoption agent. They have all these different resources to help you to create a family.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you look like when you go in.
I also think it's important to have a facility that explains to you cost, because everything comes with a cost. And definitely, we both went through the Anchor at God also came with, but kid else can have a baby for free, basically. You just boom, have a baby, they could get their insurance to pay for it, they get all these weeks off, and I'm having to, take my sick leave to go over here to get this medicine, to do this thing, to have my insurance not pay for X, Y, and Z. So I think it's important when people are going through infertility and they're deciding on what path to take, consider the cost and consider the options. When people say just adopt, just adopt can mean a lot of things. It could mean just go to your state and adopt. It could mean just go to a private adoption. It could mean just using an adoption agency and going through that process. And even choosing a surrogate, doing donor eggs, donor sperm, even donor embryo. What does that look like for you in terms of cost? And what does that look like in your state? Right. Every state is different, definitely when you're considering adoption. And so you want to understand what that means for you, the cost, and what you are spending, even in terms of IVF. When we first heard about IVF, we'd never heard of it before. And then it was like, we have to do these cycles. And we're like, what do you mean? Like, you have to pay for one every time. And so it was, sticker shock, like, oh my gosh, what route are we going to choose? And some of this, they need money up front. It's important to look for grants and things of that nature. And there are a lot of organizations that do offer grants. The Cade Foundation is one that I know that offers one every year. So it's important that, not even if you want to do crowdfunding, you might have to dip into your savings. So it comes at a cost, and you really want to also think about that when you're deciding what are the laws and what is the cost for what you want to do to become a parent, because that all needs to be considered.
Yes, and I think most of the clinics do let you know how much it is, but I think that the tricky part is understanding your insurance and what it's going to cover or not. A lot of people don't know.
First of all, I think the cost is not just financial as well. So, I mean, I think that's another piece, right? Because, to the point you're making, you're missing work. There's emotional tolls, physical tolls of having these medications in your body, cycle after cycle after cycle. So cost is a lot of things. There's another grant program that I wanted to just mention, Gift of Parenthood, which is also doing like a grant. They do a grant like every couple of months, and they gift IVF cycles. So Gift of Parenthood is worth looking up. And I think, there are a fair number of people who I think just don't understand their insurance at all. The fortunate thing about being a fertility patient is that you probably have had pretty good health up until the time when you recognize that you have a fertility issue. The downside of that is that you don't even understand how your insurance works, right? And so people think they have insurance that covers things, and their copay may be 50%. It's not your $5 or your $20 when you walk into your primary care. And so, most fertility clinics should, if they don't, provide you with a financial consultation before you start your treatment. You should really not ever be in a situation where you're finishing up your treatment and you have sticker shock because you were not expecting an expense that is suddenly there. I won't tell you that it never happens, but it should be pretty rare. And so I think making sure that when you're working with the fertility clinic that you've got a good relationship with the clinic, not just on the clinical side, but really on the whole administrative side, because you need that team of people. I had a patient say, well, I like you, but I don't like your team. And I was like, this isn't going to work, friend, because, the truth of the matter is I can't work without my team. Like, right. And I don't know, they had some like phone call issue. It doesn't even matter. But the point was I was like, I'm really sorry, but you need to find some place where you like your team and your, physician, because you need all those people to make it work,
Yeah.
And I think you said a good point about the administration part of it too, because in working between our insurance and the administrative part, sometimes the insurance said, well, it's coded as such and such and such and such, and we can't pay for this code, but we can pay for this code. Right. And so I'm calling the admin person back like, okay, what is the code that we need to make sure that we're doing so that this piece can be paid for and this piece can be paid for? So it really takes some now I feel like, I could talk about any insurance, because at the point of, just covering, what is it coded as versus not, what procedures are covered versus what's not, and really understanding that when you're doing certain procedures, like Dr. Renee said, ask, what is this? What are we doing? What does this mean? So that you can talk intelligently about it, because sometimes you have to correct your insurance. No, this is what this is. This is not what it is. And we need to talk about how we're going to maybe cover this part, but not this part, to really understand, even on down to your medications. Is it best to do your medication via your insurance at your Walgreens? Should you do mail-in? I think one of my husband's medications, it was made at a compounding center, which I didn't even know you had to do that for some of the medications. So it's really important, again, going back to just having a doctor that's going to sit down with you, and not just my husband's urologist, my OBGYN. She's fabulous in understanding the whole dynamic, and really also taking talking to me about my mental health as a female, because if you're no good for your husband, then you can't be any good. If you're no good for yourself, you can't be well for your husband. So even making me pause, like, hey, I know you came in for your pap smear this month, but I really need to talk to you about your blood pressure was a little bit high. We're going to talk about what's happening with you, because this is not normal. So really having that rapport is also very important. And then having a a group around you. I don't feel like you need to share your uterus and his sperm with everyone, but there should be a group of people where you could just get on the phone and really just talk, and them not trying to fill in the gaps for you, just letting you be. And I think that's really important as well.
I totally agree. And I maybe I'm blessed, but my clinic, the staff, oh my God. First of all, they're on the West Coast, and of course, most of the insurance stuff was on the East. So she took the phone number home with her, the office manager for my insurance company, and called them first thing in the morning, because she knew that that's when they would be there, because it's not, the time difference.
No, I mean, our insurance team starts at 7 just for that reason, because by the time, we all roll in at, whatever, 8 o'clock, and we start at 9 o'clock, and then you got to take lunch at noon. I mean, the day's over and they're closed at 2, right?
And they're gone. She did that, and I was like, oh my God. She also saved me. I was going to have a pelvic ultrasound. Mind you, I called the insurance company and said, can I go and have this? They said, yes. She called and said, you do realize this will not be covered by them. She figured that out. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. Let me call and cancel right now. She goes, I'll do it. And so she canceled it. And then I went back to the drawing board, was like, we need to find some place that will be covered, because I was going to have a pelvic ultrasound that was going to cost me over $10,000 when it was completely covered by my insurance. But we were at the wrong place.
One ultrasound?
I think that was the bill. When I looked at it, it was 4 or 5 figures. It was ridiculous when I saw the bill and was like, thank goodness the insurance paid for
all of this. Clearly I'm working at the wrong place, because I'm like, excuse me? I'm just joking. Yeah, I mean, but
that ultrasound, it was a pelvic MRI. Sorry, with contrast.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Which is still ludicrous, but yes, your point is valid.
Yeah, it was a pelvic ultrasound. And so it's really important. I think that it's unfortunate. And then the whole thing with coding, the best doctors that I ever saw and worked with were the ones that understood to a degree, so that they knew how to code things, because they knew, the insurance is going to say this isn't necessary, but it's absolutely necessary, but this is how we'll make sure it gets covered. And those are the best. When you have the staff at your office that knows that stuff, you don't need to ever leave.
The truth of the matter is that a fertility practice ought to be able to do that for you. I mean, we do 10 things, guys. It's not like we're the, primary care people and we have to know everything from influenza to cardiovascular medications. We do 10 things. So it is I will say part of the issue is that, this is very new for patients. And so sometimes we'll say things like, here's an example. Somebody will have $15,000 of insurance. And we know that they get their meds through their insurance, they will not get their services covered, because they're just they're gonna max out, and the meds are much cheaper than the services are. So we're like, look, I don't really think you should pay for your meds with your insurance. And people sort of get really anxious about, why is she telling me not to use your insurance? But the truth of the matter is, we really do 10 things, and we see the same thing over and over and over again. So when your office is telling you here's what we recommend, it's not because they're trying to cost. I mean, I really don't know anybody in our fertility world that is trying to cost people more money, right?
Right.
But some of the things and the hoops that we have to jump to make it less are not necessarily logical if you're not in the field of medicine. And I think that's scary for people, right? Because you don't understand that. And why would you? I also, TJ, wanted to point out that I thought it was really great that your OBGYN early on made your husband have that semen analysis. And I realized he agreed, all that. But the point is that so many people go so far down the path, particularly women, of sort of giving themselves heartache over what's wrong with them, when in fact there's a male factor issue that they have no control over at all. And so I think that it really just speaks to the fact that anybody who's going through a fertility evaluation, I hope we're good about this by now, but anybody needs to make sure their partner is also evaluated. It needs to be both people that are evaluated in the relationship.
I think one thing my husband said is that he wishes that as part of our premarital counseling, or even, as part of when you're in college, or talking about, hey, we need to talk about the male fertility factor and even female fertility. No one really talked about it. No one really talked to us about it until we were at the point where we were ready to have a child. And then it's kind of like, well, what do you do? I mean, we had already been married 5 years into this. So, I mean, it was no turning back after that. I mean, 5 years. I mean, some people do turn back, but we weren't turning back. Right. So it was just one of those things where we wish we would have known. I mean, hindsight is 2020. It's not like we could have done anything, but, you know, maybe there were other treatments. Maybe we could have kind of done some type of diagnostic. So now, you know, it's important for us to educate our, you know, younger cousins about, you know, nieces and nephews. Hey, you want to make sure that you go get checked. It may seem weird to go get a semen analysis. You may feel like you got it all together, but it could be that thing that's going on that you don't know. And before it changes the trajectory of how your marriage works or changes the trajectory of who you are, you want to make sure that you're getting those types of checks as routine as you get any other check, at least going to get that check. So normalizing that seeking fertility help and support is not just something you should do when you're ready to have a baby. It should be something you do when you know, are just thinking about your future. And if you want to start a family or have a wife or a spouse or a significant other, you know, how are you going to get there with the path you choose? And having a fertility consult is not a bad idea.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think that I talked to, you know, I have 4 daughters, so we have these conversations. But, you know, I think we need to be doing this in the Greek systems, right? I mean, that's a perfect place for us to like spread this information. So if you're out there and you're a Greek system and person and you have some like, you know, say, I mean, that's a really good space to educate young people at a point where they're making life decisions about their body and their reproduction. I think we can be working through the churches, which I think is happening, right? Again, a good place to educate people who are making, you know, life decisions about their bodies. And we just don't do it well. We're a very contraceptive based country, right? We spend a lot of time in sex ed teaching people how to use a condom. You can walk on any college dorm and you're going to find condoms. The number of people that I see that are like, I cannot believe I spent a decade on birth control pills and I have X, right? Or, you know, I've been using condoms all these years and I have Y, right? You know, we can do better as a society. We just haven't chosen to do it.
Yeah, we last night we were talking and one of the docs was like, if in sex education, if they could kind of cover this, it might be just a little helpful to, you know, so people have a heads up. And I've always, Dr. Cindy and I, we did an event in Chicago. We were supposed to do a tour and then 2020 of course happened. But so we were going to go to different cities and in that city go to the college campus during the day and then in the evening talk to the, you know, women, right. So that we could have this conversation in our community, because I feel like just like your goal when you graduate is to go buy a car or to go buy a house, you should probably freeze your eggs.
Yeah, 100%. We talk about, and that's another journey that, you know, I'm putting my daughters on, not that, you know, because, you know, they're young, they're just finishing college or in college, they're thinking about being doctors and lawyers and whatever else, whatever they do with their worlds. But, you know, that means they're 10 years behind by the time that they're ready to, you know, think about having a child, right? And so then maybe you're only started out with a male factor, but you wait 10 years and you're going to have a female factor too, for sure. Right.
Right.
So yeah, we don't do a good enough job about, you know, spreading this information, and it's just not generations back in our community. I mean, it is, but not in a way that we're sort of acting on the information and getting medical care and seeking help. So, you know, this is a good turning point for us as a community.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned, where can you find grants? If you Google, I'm telling you'll find them. I put the link for the Cade Foundation, and I also put, what was it? You said
Gift of Parenthood.
I typed that in, so you can Google that as well. Someone said, well, tell us the bogus ones. I don't know the bogus ones.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the space. I mean, honestly, the people that are setting up these foundations and these organizations are not actually taking money from you. They're really just looking for an application throwing you into a pool and pulling out a name and offering you services, right?
Yeah.
And people are rightfully scared, but I think that, if you find a clinic and it's on SART and, they're listed in the CDC and they're doing true IVF and they're really interested in providing services, that's a pretty good bet of a place to start. I doubt what they're doing is a scam. You might get there and decide you don't like the doctor or the clinic or whatever, but I've not heard of scams around this. I'm not a major fan of people getting meds on the internet because I don't know how they've been kept. I can't tell you anything about them. It's kind of illegal, but whatever. I just don't think it's a good idea, even if it were legal. People have talked to me about can I sell my eggs on the internet? I get that on TikTok a lot. No, you can't sell your eggs or sperm on the internet, right? Those things I think you should stay away from. But the foundations and the grants, the discounted programs on meds like Compassionate Care, Reunite RX, those are truly incredibly helpful programs that are designed to ensure that there's more access for patients.
Yeah, you can go to resolve.org, and I know that they have a lot of information when it comes to the grants and discount programs. I know Ferring Pharmaceuticals does a discount with Menopure, and then you Reunite RX. If you put in your information, yes, you have to put your social security number and stuff. They will give you a discount based on whatever they think, and you have to put your taxes.
Upload your taxes, or whatever. Yeah.
But they'll give you a discount based on that. And I think at the low end, it's 40%.
So the low end for those guys, everybody gets 10% just for writing out their name, filling out an application. The low end is 25%. For Reunite RX, the high end is still 75%.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And that's Follistim. For Compassionate Care, which is Gonal-F, low end is 25, high end is 50. So, but still, if you can get 50% off your $3,000 worth of drugs, I'll take that any day.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing a lot of people don't know, and I'm going to mention this every night so people know, Starbucks will pay for fertility treatments. You have to work for them for 90 days. Does not have to be full-time, can be part-time, and they will pay for fertility treatments. The other thing is there's 19 states in the country that are mandated states that have to cover something as far as fertility. If you work for a company that is headquartered in one of those 19 states, then you get the benefit no matter what state you live in.
Correct.
And if you live in a state that's not mandated, but your company is in a mandated, then you're good. So, and I only know Illinois because that's where I reside. So Illinois is a mandated state. And so Illinois, of course, it depends on your insurance still, but I have Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, and they cover 80/20 once you meet your deductible, which is
the tricky part with that, Dr. Renee, is that you have private insurance and you have good private insurance, right? And I know you just said it depends on your insurance. I was talking to some folks about this, and they were interested in Infocell, which is sort of a lower cost form of IVF. And I was like, why do you need Infocell if you've got coverage for IVF? About 40% of people that live in Illinois do not have fertility benefits. So it depends on what your insurance is, meaning if you have if you're not, well, a lot of people don't have insurance, right? So living in the state isn't enough. You have to live in the state. You have to have some form of private insurance. I don't even think the state insurances cover it. I do believe in Massachusetts state insurance covers it, but I don't.
I think in Massachusetts, I am trained in Massachusetts. And
but I don't think it does in Illinois. So it's still tricky. But I think one point is, I don't care who you work for. Pick up the phone, call your HR people, and find out what your benefits are, right? And when they say you have fertility benefits, that's not enough. Now you call your insurance company and you figure out what the fertility benefits are that you have. I know you're like, what do I ask? Believe me, if you're going through fertility treatment, somebody will be able to tell you what to ask, right?
Yeah.
But you need to know, do I have coverage for in vitro fertilization? Do I just have coverage for a consultation? That's a vast difference, right? And so people come in and they're like, I have fertility benefits. I'm like, you do for this consultation today. And that's it.
That's it.
Right? But on the other hand, if you work for whatever, pick your company, Google. I tell people this all the time. I'm like, don't leave that company without taking those benefits with you. I don't care if you have to COBRA for 3 months. It is cheaper than paying for that stuff out of pocket, right? Do not leave money on the table if you work for a company that has benefits.
Somebody typed in the chat, Starbucks, Amazon, Wayfair, Target are a few of the companies that will cover. So just so you know, and like I said, I do know, I think Starbucks and Amazon, both of them, you can do part-time and still get the benefits. So I know there's physicians that do do part-time at Starbucks because they want it covered. So don't be too proud. And
A lot of money.
it's a lot of
money.
money,
Yeah.
because sometimes, especially if you've waited like I have, then it's going to be more than one cycle. And so, it
And
gets pricey.
average cost of a cycle without insurance is probably anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 if you're not doing embryo biopsy, $20,000 if you are. So if you have benefits that cover that sort of stuff, you definitely need to make sure you know about them.
And I also make sure your fertility benefits for male versus female, because those are different as well.
Okay.
My husband needed a testicular biopsy, and could it be coded for infertility, or did it have to be coded for something else? So you really want to make sure too that in some states it's not covered for same-sex couples, but it is for a male and a female couple. In some states it's covered for men. It's not covered for men, but it is covered for women. So definitely want to make sure that you know what your state covers, what your insurance covers, and which person it covers it for, because it can even be gender specific. And working, advocating for male infertility and being in the male infertility space, there's just not a lot for men. It's coming around for sure, but there's not a lot for men. And also encouraging men to even go and even just go get a physical. You're not even just going to get fertility. Let's go get a physical. Let's go talk about the things that you can do to make sure that you're able to produce healthy sperm. Not to say that my husband did anything that he could have changed his outcome, but if you're with a significant other, or if you're a man in general, please go get checked and please know what your insurance covers. So if you do ever have to be faced with a diagnosis of a fertility or infertility issue, that you know what options you have available for you and your significant other, should you all decide to take alternate routes to parenthood.
And the other piece to know about insurance is that by and large, fertility treatment travels with the female, which means that, and I'm not talking about coverage for like your PESA or your Tessie, but if you are a female and you are going through IVF and your husband's insurance has benefits, but you're not on it, your husband cannot access those benefits for you. I'm going to say that again. If your husband's company, okay, or your male partner's company, or actually even your female's partner company has benefits, but you, the person who's actually having the treatment, are not covered on that partner's insurance, that partner cannot apply that insurance to you. It's a huge deal, okay? And we see it all the time, because now with dual working, couples, people are like, oh, my company has its own benefits and my husband's company has its own benefits. Well, my husband's company has $20,000 or $100,000 of IVF cover, fertility coverage, but I'm not on it. Well, then you cannot access that fertility coverage. So really, really look into that. And of course, the time to look into that is as open enrollment comes around, right? So that you're prepared for the next year, okay? And, if you're young and you have time to wait, then it's not such a big deal if you're not on it that year. But if you're 45 and you'd have to wait 9 months now to get back on the insurance of your partner, that's a huge deal. So take the time now to make sure you understand your insurance and your partner's insurance.
Yes. And I was one of those people, my insurance was going to cost more for the meds than if I went without it.
Yeah.
So I went without it and had mail order instead of going to the local drugstore, because it was just far cheaper. And I'm talking a large amount of money cheaper.
Yeah.
And even I'm talking about insurance, some companies also will pay for adoption, other paths to parenthood. They will support or provide support for adoption, tax credits for adoption if you adopt. So just really, when you're exploring your path to parenthood, make sure you explore what things are available to you through your organization. I know that where I work, they give a stipend for those who have adopted, and also look at the leave time you have, adopting an infant versus having a baby, that sort of thing. There are all types of leave that you may need to take in order to do some of the procedures and processes. And also, I really want to advocate for mental health. It's so important. It's so critical. Definitely dealing with any issue, but infertility, and for us, I know male infertility was huge. because of course my husband doesn't want to talk to anybody about anything because he didn't want anybody to know. Hence the name of the book, Semen Secrets. He didn't want to tell anyone. But the emotional and mental toll that it takes on you to try to be strong for your partner, but also be strong for yourself. People are not built all the time to carry everything. And I think we as a Black community and we as women in general, and men too, we feel like we got to carry it. That's how we're built. That's how we're made. We can just take it all in. And that's not really the case, because at some point, you will break down. You'll see it in your health. You'll see it in weight gain. You'll see it in just your whole mental state. You're not calm. You're just all over the place. And so it's very important that you take into account your mental health and how this can affect you. And when your mental health is affected, it also affects the health of your body and affects the way that you go through a procedure. So if you're not, procedure just doesn't happen. I go to the doctor and I'm about to have this biopsy, or I go to the doctor, I'm about to take this medicine. Your medicine is affected by your stress level, your blood pressure, and how even you go in mentally to the process, even mentally into having adoption. There's always risk and ebbs and flows. Adoption is not just, oh, you go pick a baby out of a book and it's yours. That's a process, and it can be a stressful process. So just consider that as you're going through, and also just not making it seem so simple. I know that the hashtag today is, what you should do in terms of you're looking at the resolve and you're following the 5-day. And we really need to talk about what can we do? What can we do to support people, and also helping them make decisions, and also helping them understand, it's your infertility and you have to grieve, you have to mourn. It's a process. I said it was like someone died. Like, no, I didn't lose someone, but my dream died. The thing that I felt like I was supposed to do or was going to happen for me, it died. And I had to face that and face my mind. And the mind is a great place, but it's also a dangerous place. And it could be a dark place if you really don't process the diagnosis you're receiving. So I think that was so important for me to just understand as I was going through the journey.
I think that's a really great point. The American Society for Reproductive Medicine for years has advocated that women who are going through fertility treatment, because at the time that's what they were advocating for, but now men, couples should be receiving some mental health support. And there are programs, Boston IVF with Alice Domar have been known for it for years and years, that mandate and get incredible pushback from patients, but do mandate that patients go through some consultative services. And I think when you mentioned, that your husband really struggled with even this to the point of thinking about taking his own life. Those are things that need to be acknowledged, right? If you're going to be in the space of experiencing, fertility challenges. I think you really have to sort of take that seriously. And I also wanted to point out, there are actually quite a few companies that will support adoption and third party as well, right? Donor eggs, surrogacy, and donor sperm. Most of them, just for folks that are out there, are going to require that you pay up front and they will reimburse. So you do need to sort of have some preparation for that. But they do often reimburse amounts as much as $10,000 to $20,000, dollars for this sort of service. So I think that's really helpful and speaks to the fact that we're starting to broaden the way we think about family building, and as far as insurance and family and benefits are concerned.
This has been so full of information. Thank you guys so much. I want to make sure everyone can go get your book, TJ. So please let me know, what is the website? I'm going to put it up on the screen.
It is www.semensecrets.com. You could go on there. My book is also available on Amazon. You can get the hard copy book, and also you can get it via Kindle. You can also find me on Instagram. It's at TJ Payton, and that's TJPEYTEN. And I also have a page for my book at Semen Secrets. And feel free to DM me. I answer DMs all the time. So if you want to DM me, have a question, or you want to know about my story, I'm very candid. So please feel free. And I have recordings about things that I've talked about. So please, please, please get the book and share it with someone. If you don't feel like you want to read, you can ask Dr. Lane. It's a quick read. Like, you can read it very quick. So make sure that you get the book and share it with someone, definitely.
And where can we find you, Dr. Lane? I mentioned last night, I will mention every night this week, that you do not have to live in the same city or state as your REI. Mine is in Vegas. I'm not there. And so you can see them virtually. They can arrange for your testing and your monitoring, and then you fly to or drive to or whatever, get to them, and then that's when you have your actual procedures with them. So,
and I'm going to be honest, if you are a woman of color and you are not getting the service that you need, and you feel like you need to see somebody that's a woman of color, there are probably about 15 of us in the country, okay,
exactly.
which is a ridiculous number. But hey, at least we're in double digits.
Right.
But I say that because you're going to need to take the initiative to like see the first person, not have it work out, and then go find somebody else, right? So, people often do that, and I will often see people if they want to be seen, by me. I'm thrilled to do that. We do a lot of sort of remote care. I always say fertility is kind of, geographically agnostic, but I also try and direct people. If you live in Georgia and I know that, there's a Hope Fertility in Georgia, I'm going to send you to my darling friend who's at Hope Fertility because she's right down the street for you, and that's easier. Anyway, I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Dr. Danielle Lane. It's really my name, just no period in there. And our institute is called Lane Fertility Institute, so we're online there as well. So you can find me at any of those places. I'm pretty good at responding to DMs. I'm probably not as good as TJ is, but but we do respond to sort of anything that we get that comes through our website. We're very good about that. So
LaneFertilityInstitute.com.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
No, thank you. You guys, this has been excellent. And I must throw a plug. Dr. Danielle Lane is so amazing on TikTok. Please go follow her. You guys, I've been following her, I think, probably most of the pandemic. And then Dr. Cindy knew you, and she's like, she has 5 kids. I go, I'm telling you, blew me away when I read that.
How do you think I learned TikTok?
And that's why I was like, that's why she's so good at TikTok. She's got teenagers. But you guys, please follow. If you have questions, please send them the questions so that you can get these questions answered. And please make sure like she said, she can find you someone if they are local to you to send you to them. But I tell everyone, you should try and find doctors that look like you, because we're going to get taken care of the best from someone that looks like us. Now, there are a few of us, that not quite sure, but most of us are really great. So thank you, everyone. I will see you again tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we are talking, I can't remember, but we will see you. There will be 5 o'clock tomorrow night. So 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Pacific tomorrow, because there is a 6 o'clock show that's every week about breast cancer, with the breast cancer conversation with blackdoctor.org every week. So tomorrow night we will be at 5. But thank you so much, ladies, and this has been lovely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks for
Bye.
Bye-bye.